To discuss, let's bring in our guest. Rabbi Steven Burg is the CEO of Aish Global, and Shahar Azani is a former spokesperson for the Israeli consulate in New York. Good morning.
Good morning.
So the rapid rise of anti-Semitism across the world and right here on American soil, especially on our college campuses in the United States, is alarming. Harvard should have their grant money taken, which is tax dollars, as they cannot condemn what is happening. What's your reaction to President Trump's proposal, Rabbi?
I fully support and I agree with it. I have to tell you that when October 7th happened, 33 student organizations rushed out of their beds to condemn Israel, blame Israel, while women and children were being butchered in the streets. There was, at that point, Harvard should have realized they had an issue and they should have dealt with it. Not only did they not deal with it when people begged and pleaded, their president went down to Congress and say it was entirely okay to call for the genocide of Jews in certain contexts. And I have to tell you, one of our students, we have an alumnus of our institution, Shabbos Kestenbaum, who sued Harvard. I tell you, Harvard sent my organization a 999-page subpoena for communications between us. So they've shown that they can fight when the Jews are trying to understand exactly what's happening to them, but they won't police their own organization and try and keep Jews safe. So in my mind, they've lost all credibility, and I support the government.
Mm-hmm. And this anti-Semitism is rampant across our elite college campuses, but it also is just another example of how students are becoming radicalized too. And it's all a part of the general norm and ethos of these schools, because we heard just last week the killer of the two Israeli consulate staffers who were shot dead outside a DC Jewish museum. The man who shot them said, "Free, free Palestine." So this is commonplace. We're hearing these words shouted everywhere now. So Shahar, can you talk about what we should be doing now to eliminate this type of rhetoric, because it's no longer just free speech?
Well, here is exactly as you said, we should be doing, not just condemning. When we live in a reality when such acts of harassment, intimidation, and violence against Jewish students on college campuses, they're not even condemned, let alone any disciplinary action taken against the perpetrators. You mentioned Harvard. You know, one of the most viral videos that came out after October 7th showed a Jewish student walking on campus at Harvard being accosted by these anarchist hooligans who are covering their faces and donning the keffiyehs, continuously marching him down the quad with chants and accusations. Now, a year and 8 months, almost 600 days to the massacre, no disciplinary action has been taken against those students. To the contrary, they've been rewarded scholarships and honor, and under such atmosphere of complicity, no wonder we see horrendous executions like we've seen of our 2 embassy staff in Washington, D.C., because words are lethal and words can kill. And if we don't act against it, we might as well have pulled the trigger and executed these innocent people. And that's a grave and dangerous risk, not just to Jews everywhere and in the United States, but to the very foundations of the United States of America. And we have to act now against this domestic terrorism, because what starts with the Jews never ends with the Jews. And what starts with the Jewish state will never end with the Jewish state.
So true, Shahar. A new article out by Time quoted that since the attacks of October 7th, the Anti-Defamation League has reported a 361% increase in anti-Semitic incidents in the U.S. alone. What is the root cause of this hatred, Rabbi? And the thing is that we know that it's being taught on college campuses, but I don't think it's just there. And I was quite shocked. We know that there's certain people hated, Jews, blacks, others, but I was shocked at the level of anti-Semitism since October 7th. People freely sharing comments on social media and other platforms and venues. So what is the source of this hatred?
Yeah, look, I think Shahar just says so beautifully. Obviously, the rhetoric is not helping on campus, but it's not only campus. You're certainly seeing online, and you're seeing it at the extreme right, and you're seeing it at the extreme left. The Jews have seen this playbook for 2,000 years, meaning that there's a certain demonization. You know, the Jews, they're this group, they have money, they have influence, you know, and it's becoming out there more and more. And therefore, what happens is when people are hearing this, they're saying, oh, the Jews, they're no good, they're not like us. And then they attack us. Literally, words turn into beatings, words turn into violence. And that is why we're so up in arms about the campus, because, you know, you look at the campus here and you see the faculty, and frankly, I want to be clear, I think what Shachar said is absolutely correct. What begins the Jews never ends with the Jews. It's not about Israel, it's not about the Jews, it's about American values, about freedom. That is what is being attacked here. And so when people hear us that we're being attacked and we're out there and you know, we're this evilness kind of plaguing the country, so that turns into attacks in the street. And you saw what just happened, these horrific violent attacks in Washington. None of us were surprised. We were waiting for it to come. We didn't know where it would happen. And it's only going to continue. And the administration has to take, really, it starts at campus, but also dealing with online. And again, far right and far left, they have to be held accountable. You cannot demonize any group. America is built on those values of freedom of religion, freedom of speech, yes, but as long as you're not calling for violence against other people. So we have to call out these terrible, terrible things. And unfortunately, right now, the Jewish community does not feel safe in the United States of America. I'm a proud American. And for me, this has been beyond painful that walking the streets now, there is not a synagogue in this country that does not have security staff paid for by those synagogues out, because God knows where the next attack's going to occur.
You're absolutely right, Rabbi. It's a horrible time for Jews and for Americans. And in terms of the attack on American values, we learned from the manifesto from this individual, the killer. He was a proponent of communism. He supported Luigi Mangione. So it's not just anti-Semitism. It's this individual radicalized, maybe on platforms like TikTok, radicalized by the news, because we're hearing all sorts of propaganda reports from the far left talking about Israel committing genocide. So it's a culmination of influences which is resulting in the creation of killers. Shahar, your thoughts?
Well, continuing to what Rabbi Burg just said so wisely, the reality is that this indoctrination does not begin on college campuses. In the ADL report that you had mentioned, we have seen indications of middle school children who are being exposed to this kind of propaganda, including an 11-year-old who told his Jewish classmate, we will put you back in the ovens. Just think about that for a second. And a literature teacher, English literature teacher in California, who comes into the classroom and tells the students out of nowhere, all Israelis are killing women and children in Gaza. Now swap Israelis with Jews. And there you have the blood libels of the end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th, and the realities like we've seen in Washington, D.C. Now, I do have one ask today. And I think what we're seeing is the vocal minority taking ownership of our streets, college campuses, and public squares. It is time for the silent majority to rise to the defense of our democratic, justice-loving, humane society. We can afford to be quiet no more. The age of words must be over, and now is the age for deeds. We have to rise and take action, or otherwise we will have forfeited the future of our very children to these anarchists.
You know, Rabbi, I teach a business course, and one of the students, foreign students from Asia, he asked an innocent question when I opened the forum to discuss any business topic that you saw in the headlines. He chose to mention what's at the time, I believe this was in mid-October last fall. He mentioned, well, the crimes that Israel is committing on Gazans. And I said, can you expound on that? And he wasn't coming from an evil place. He said, well, you know, I don't know much about it, but I think it's just wrong. And, you know, we should all love each other. So I use that as an opportunity, because he's already brainwashed and conditioned by what he saw on social media or other, you know, printed articles that are international. So this is not just Israel as well as America, it's all over the world. And I said, well, if someone offered you 95% of what you asked for in any negotiation, would you take that deal? Because this is a business course. He said, absolutely, Professor, that's a no-brainer. So I begin to walk and talk about the history, and he was actually pleasantly troubled because he had never heard that information before. So this is a propaganda battle, as Shahar mentioned, that we have to get the truth out there. What say you?
First of all, thank you so much for doing what you did. I think if more people did that, I think it would be a better world out there. And there is a phrase, a cynical phrase, they call it Pallywood, which is the Palestinian Hollywood. You're seeing pictures that have nothing to do with the conflict that are being put out there in social media. This what's going on out there. There was not one Jew in Gaza. Gaza was given back so many years ago. There was no Jews. They were ruling themselves. In fact, the problem was Israel had thought Hamas had it too good, and maybe they'll leave us alone because they have got their land. So again, details and facts don't matter as much as they should on social media. We've got to get the right phraseology out there and the pictures and tell the truth. And what you did with that one person was so important, and everyone needs to do that. Find the facts, find the facts. This conflict is not based on facts. Israel is a democratic state. Israel is one of the most moral, ethical states in the world. The Jewish people brought morality and ethics to the world 3,500 years ago through Abraham. This is who we are, and you need to know who the bad guys are, because those bad guys are the same people that flew a plane into World Trade Center. I'm a New Yorker. In 2001, and unless we realize who the real true enemies of this country and of morality and ethics are, we're going to be in a lot of trouble. So thank you for fighting that fight for us.
And thank you for mentioning the World Trade Center. I was there in 1993 in 5 World Trade Center during the bombing, and I was in 7 World Trade Center on 9/11. So I take it very seriously. Rabbi Steven Burg, Shahar Azani, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. God bless.